Having read the transcripts now of the grand jury, FBI interviews, and all of that, and having been a prosecutor for 13 years, I don't see how this case normally would even have been brought to a grand jury. This is the kind of case, had it not been, had the racial overtones and the national publicity, where a prosecutor would have come to the conclusion that there's not enough evidence to present to the grand jury.
That is a former mayor talking. That's a former prosecutor talking. Rudy Giuliani saying it appears the prosecutor bent over backwards to be fair in the Ferguson police shooting case. That's his view. The lawyer for Michael Brown's family has a different view, saying they will do everything they can to make sure that Wilson is ultimately held accountable.
The family will pursue all the legal avenues, potential civil wrongful death lawsuit, as well as look at pushing forward with proposed legislation for the Michael Brown law.
Judge Alex Ferrer is the host of Judge Alex and our guest back from Miami. Judge, how are you? And good morning to you.
I'm fine. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Is Giuliani right? What do you think about the point he was making with Wallace on Sunday?
I think he's absolutely right. There's no way this case would have ever even been presented to a grand jury. I think the prosecutor in this case did that in an abundance of caution to try to dispel the public impression that he couldn't be fair, because there was all that question about whether he was the right prosecutor for the job, given his close ties to law enforcement and his father having been murdered by an African-American man, and turning around and just saying, I've reviewed all the evidence and I'm not going to file charges would have caused an uproar. So he presented to a grand jury, not to mention the fact that he had those witnesses who really only came forward under promise of confidentiality, the 6 or 7 African-American witnesses who sided with the police officer. If he had just not presented it to the grand jury, he would have had to take affirmative steps to protect their identity, and that would have caused even more uproar, people saying those witnesses probably don't even exist.
So you're saying despite the criticism directed at the DA, you read the transcripts and you thought he did a fair job?
I haven't read all of the transcripts, but I'll tell you this. I have no doubt that what he represented the evidence to be, it actually is, because first of all, he released all the evidence. Secondly, the Department of Justice is doing a concurrent investigation. There's no way they would let him stand up there and say that the evidence is something other than what it is. So I don't have any problem trusting that he represented the evidence to be what it is. That being the case, if the evidence is as he represented, and I believe it is, there's no way that a jury would find that the officer was not justified. Officers make decisions in a split second. When a man is charging at him, a man who has tried to take his gun away from him, he has to make a split-second decision on what are my options here. Those decisions are reviewed by lawyers over months and years who pretend that this officer had all the time in the world to pick the right course of action. Not only do I think it was justified, but even if a jury were to say he could have done something different, they probably still would have found that his actions were reasonable under the circumstances. This case really wouldn't have gone anywhere.
Given that answer there, what do you believe are the best options then for the Brown family?
Well, it depends on what they want to, accomplish here. If what they want to do is accomplish is get some money, then file a lawsuit against the department. They're difficult to win because the public does realize that police officers have a difficult job and have difficult decisions to make under very trying circumstances, and they give them the benefit of the doubt. And especially in a case like this, where the evidence that has finally surfaced favors the officer. But I have no doubt that they will file a civil action. That's what Crump and any plaintiff's lawyer who comes into the case is there to do. They're lawyers. They're there to sue. If they were plumbers, they'd snake the drains or install a toilet. But they're lawyers, and they're going to file a lawsuit. Had he been indicted, they still would have filed a lawsuit.
One last thing, and quickly here now, but don't they interview the same witnesses, whether it's a civil case or a federal case?
Absolutely. The attorneys are...
So what changes, if anything?
Well, nothing changes except for the standard of proof. You know, it's beyond a reasonable doubt for criminal, and it's just a greater weight of the evidence. But, you know, take a look at prior history. They represented Trayvon Martin's family Zimmerman won at trial. The jury found he acted in self-defense. They still got millions of dollars in their lawsuit because you get racial tensions raised. The community wants the tensions to go away, and a lot of times you basically get them to pay you even though you shouldn't win because they want this over with. Unfortunately, it's a bad formula because you leave town and you leave a city much worse off than when you came into town.
Thank you, Judge, for your time. Alex Ferrer, the host of Judge Alex. Out of Miami. We'll talk again.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Martha.